Hi Year 11, welcome to this short summary of Bayonet Charge by Ted Hughes. Thank you Fern for requesting this one. We're going to go through a little reminder of the poem, some comments on structure. I've put up the image for me that really underpins this poem isn't actually of the bayonet and the soldier, it's of the yellow hair, which I think is such a significant symbol that I don't actually talk about in this video. So do make sure that you do some research on the yellow hair and why it is so important in showing the impact that war has, both on nature but also with the hair as a symbol for the soldier himself. So in a nutshell, this poem is about the singular experience of a soldier in war. So this is told in the third person. One of the reasons that could be is because Hughes had never experienced war personally himself. This could be based on his father's experiences in World War I, but that is some additional context that you can use for wider revision here. So this poem starts off in media res, in the middle of the action, with that key adverb, suddenly he awoke and was running, which creates a huge sense of panic and confusion, both for us as a reader, but also for the soldier who doesn't seem to know how he's got where he is. I often think that this poem has a real nightmarish quality to it. There's a lot about kind of running, panicking, seeming to run, but not knowing where you're running or what you're running from or towards, which I always associate with a kind of nightmare landscape. The first stanza is filled with imagery of combat. There's some personification, which links in with like exposure. There's also this kind of mechanical imagery, both in the first stanza and the second, which seems to suggest that war has turned the soldier into some sort of machine. Similes like lugged a rifle numb as a smashed arm really help to show this. Now, we often talk about when faced with a threat that we've got fight or flight tendencies, but actually we can add freeze into that, so fight, flight or freeze. And the second stanza is all about that moment of freeze. The soldier seems to take this momentary pause, very unsafe in the kind of landscape that he's in, which I always interpret as maybe like a no man's land, where he's frozen in time, unable to take in or make sense of the situation that he finds himself trapped in. He is literally frozen while he contemplates it. But then in the third stanza, he has to keep running, he has to keep going because he has no choice. He is in an active battlefield, and we see the chaos resume around him, ultimately resulting in him feeling only fear and panic rather than the more lofty ideals of king, honour, human dignity that he was perhaps filled with, the propaganda that he was given before coming to war, and that's all now dropped off in the face of the actual battle. So this is a poem with some really clear structural significance. We've talked about this in a couple of other videos so far, but for this poem in particular, it's quite easy to remember the structure if it's not given to you, because there are just 3 stanzas, and the 3 stanzas kind of mirror that sense of movement that we see in the poem. So the first stanza, starting with that in media res, is all about the action. It's running, it's dynamic movements, there's a real sense of motion and chaos, as we've said. That then moves into the second stanza, where there is a stillness. A word that's used is statuary, where he is literally stock still like a statue, frozen in shock and in horror, before finally the enjambment between the second and third stanza takes him back into having to run for his life with no other choice but to just keep running. So there's a lot more we could say about the structure of the poem, particularly the use of enjambment and caesura is really interesting if you got this given to you, where you can kind of more minutely engage with it and talk about those structural features. But that's just a kind of like a 3-tier breakdown, so to speak. In terms of key terms and comparison poems, so I think that for this poem, I've pretty much said it on every single slide so far, but in media res is a really key structural point. So that's starting in the middle of the action, creating that sense of chaos and confusion, as we've already said. Another thing here, so phonology. Phonology literally means like the study of sound. And if we look at this poem, there is a lot of phonology that's utilised by Hughes. We get some quite harsh alliteration. There's some sibilance in there that creates that kind of like hissing sound of maybe the bullets streaking through the air. There's some really quite what we could call cacophonous, which means for kind of very unpleasant sounds that are used. So I do think that the use of phonology, specific sounds within this poem, is a really good one to look at. So in terms of what poems we could compare this to, Remains, individual experiences, Charge of the Light Brigade, reality of conflict, as opposed to the propaganda that they're given, War Photographer with the traumatic experiences that people go through, and Kamikaze, effects of conflict on people. As always, there's a lot more, but these are just some of the poems that I would initially think to link Bayonet Charge to. Like the video and subscribe to our Cedars YouTube channel. Bye everyone.